Okay. Welcome to another session of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. I think sometimes what happens is people have had such a rich surfeit of kind of events through the day that they actually become fatigued in a way. Yeah, festival fatigue, and that may be happening here, but one of the wonderful things that happens in technology now is that this all will all go on YouTube. And what we find is over the course of the year, we get hundreds, thousands of hits actually. People watch it on YouTube. And, sorry we don't have the proper audience here for you today, but I'm looking forward to the panel myself. Today on the panel, as you know, with our festival, there are certain themes we come back to again and again. All of you have been here for a while. One of those is ways of belonging, which is an important theme for us, which is a line from a poem by Souza, who's a very important poet of Goan origin. He lives in Mumbai. But another one is finding a voice, and that's something that we found great resonance from in Goa, but also everywhere around the world. How do people actually get to find their voice? And in this instance, we're talking about finding a voice in photography, and we have three, I think, great examples of people who found their voice in different ways, so we learn a lot. Abeer Hoque is a Nigerian-born Bangladeshi-American writer and photographer who's published a coffee table book of travel photographs and poems. Another book of fiction is a collection of linked stories, photographs and poems. And she has a memoir forthcoming from Hoque colleges in India. Is it out already? Coming out in January. So that's wonderful. She's also held photography exhibitions. David D'Souza is one of India's leading proponents of photography, relentlessly inventive. He also uses social media in very interesting ways. I have a book of his myself. He's, I think, used photography pushes the boundaries of photography in more and more interesting ways than almost anyone practicing in the medium today. So very privileged to have him with us. And Assavri Kulkarni is someone who has developed a wonderful voice of her own in photography here in Goa. I've had the privilege of working with her over years. At various times she's taken portraits to go along with stories that I've done, but she's increasingly worked on her own preoccupations and recently produced a most marvelous book. Unfortunately, it's not on sale outside, but I urge you to take a look at it. It's called Markets of Goa, photo essays, very rich photo essays about markets which perhaps even I who lived in Goa and I traveled the state relentlessly looking for little things that might not catch people's eye. Assavri found many places and many things which I did not know about, and it's a great opportunity actually to congratulate you on this wonderful book. I urge you to find it, and with that I will pass the microphone over to David.
Thank you. May I invite the audience to come a little closer so we could have a little more interaction even without the mics perhaps. And if you are fed up, you're happy to walk out and I won't feel bad about it. But if you did come closer, it would be lovely.
They're really comfortable.
The way we're going to do this is, since I'm meeting Abeer for the first time, I attended a talk that she gave just to figure out her context and where she's coming from, and you heard Vivek give you wonderful regional explanations of where Abeer comes from, but where Abeer's true voice comes from photographically. I will hand over the mic to her. Similarly, Assavri will talk about her journey and how she became who she is, and whether that voice is the end point or whether it's the starting point for branching off. And then we will spend about 5 minutes talking about our own journeys, and then we'll talk about the philosophy of voice. Whether you need a voice, whether there's an anti-voice, whether there is the death of a voice, all those things, in the postmodern kind of way. So first I'll hand over to Abeer, and eye contact.
So my photography started off sort of in a very informal way. I had become a writer. I'd had a sort of a big career shift from business to writing around the 2000, 2001. So I've been writing for several years at the point when I decided that photography, what I've been doing is taking lots of pictures, mostly of my friends at parties, but it gradually became something more where I was more interested in these more arty photos, as one might say, but just interested in composing them and figuring out how to frame them. And I was really obsessed with unusual angles, because I had this little point-and-shoot digital camera which had a swivel lens. So I could also do street photography without really being very obvious about it, because I could hold the camera down at my waist, I could see the screen, and the lens would be pointing, sort of like the old-fashioned cameras that they had before. So I started taking street photography that way, and then, or shooting street photography, and then also the camera, this little like Nikon Coolpix, took really nice pictures in low light. So I also then became obsessed with taking pictures of in low light, like in the evenings or at night where there's other ambient lighting. And because of this weird swivel lens, I also started taking pictures of weird angles. Because I could set it up in different ways, I could take unfamiliar angles or get unfamiliar angles of familiar objects. So those kinds of themes are the ones that I have sort of spent many, many years taking pictures of. And it took, I had done it for many years, and in fact, at some point, my friends got together and they pooled money and they bought me an SLR camera, because I was still using this little digital swivel lens thing. And it's a digital SLR. But that's when I sort of first identified as a photographer, because up until then I was just sort of an ardent amateur. And maybe still am, because I'm not very technically competent, but I've done it for enough years that I know what it is that I like to do, and I know where it is I want to go with my photography. So that's sort of a brief of where I started.
Assavri, you want to? When I asked Assavri a little earlier, I said, how should we structure this? She says, the only voice I can hear is my 6-month baby crying in the car.
So, basically, I'm an artist, fine artist, Goa College of Art, pass out. All I could understand, and I started doing photography was when I was in my 3rd year. And the first outdoor trip that we went was Mangeshi Temple and Old Goa Church. I had borrowed my friend's FM10 and one film roll of 100 ISO. And I was clicking pictures and clicking, and I realized that it's over. 36 frames over. And I came back home and I said, okay, there's a camera, and that's it. That was my first click, which I went on doing for one whole day. When I came back home and I gave we used to print and process our own films in art college. And I saw images which were like, did I click this? It was, I showed them to my professors, and my professor said, oh, Assavri, this is all fluke, and you've got good pictures in fluke. They just happened to you. I don't think you're that good photographer to have such good images. Because I still remember one frame was just below the Mangeshi temple. There's this lady who still sits there with bananas. She sells local bananas there. Yellow, small, cute little bananas. And she has this umbrella, pink umbrella with yellow dots on them. And she keeps them to cover the bananas, so they don't get shriveled up in the sun. And that was a basket, of course, a hand-woven cane basket, and that was the shot. And a very cute shot, and I still love that shot, and I have it in my negative. So my professors were discussing it for a whole evening, that shot, and how it's interesting, and the pink and yellows and the basket, the whole composition. And there were a lot of other shots, of course, but that's my favorite shot till today. I haven't taken a better shot than that till today. 15 years now. 15 years I'm doing photography, and I don't think I've taken a better shot than that. First shot, and that's it. That was the last shot. But and then I never stopped after that. And I still remember the day I went to my father and I said, I need 11,000 to buy myself a camera, because it's necessary if I'm going to take photography as a subject. So my dad said, you children want to do drugs, you want to do alcohol, and now you want to do photography. So no way you're getting one, he said. And this is 96, 97 I'm talking about, like not very old. So I didn't get a camera. I cried for 3 days. And I was seeing my husband now, and I was seeing him. I was in my 3rd year, of course, and I was seeing Nirmal, my husband. And Nirmal said, don't worry, don't cry. And he was my boyfriend, so he wanted to be nice to me. He said, don't worry, we'll work somewhere. We'll do some odd jobs and gather that 11,000. Like. So I said, okay. So, and my dad is not poor, no, he's quite well-to-do person. So he sent his accountant, like, and I didn't take the money from my dad. I'm sorry, I'm just going a little ahead. And so my dad's accountant comes. My dad owns fishing trawlers. I mean, we belong to fishing community. So he comes and I did not take the money from my dad's account. So my dad comes and he actually flunks the money on my face, 11,000. And said, here, take, do whatever you want. I said, but Baba, I call him Baba. So Baba, why don't you come with me? I want you to be there with me when I buy my camera. He said, no, I don't have time for all this nonsense things you're doing. Like, first of all, because he was upset with me joining art college. He wanted me to be a CA. Yeah. So Baba, he said, no way. And he did not talk to me for a whole 1 year after I decided to give talk before. So yes, that was it. And then nothing stopped. I just kept working, and I was working when I was in college also because I wanted to make money. Because my dad didn't pay my fees for 1 whole year of my art college. So it was a tough beginning. It was really, really tough because I remember begging to people to buy my black and white, which I used to process in my college, and people would buy them for their office and corporate or houses to have them as beautification thing, as one of it could be in one deepest corner somewhere never seen. But yeah, people used to buy my work, and that's how I made money for 1 whole year to attend art college. And after that, I just went on, and it was difficult for me. Actually, it was really difficult taking up works in Goa because there was nobody doing professional photography in Goa. It was just photojournalism or people clicking pictures for newspapers. So when my first shoot was at Taj, and I was doing interiors at Taj, and they looked at me and they saw, we're sure this girl is going to handle the work that we want to do, and they actually did not. They made me sit for 2 hours before I started the shoot, and like it was really embarrassing, like that somebody's making, like just staring at you, some was talking, discussing, which dude, I think she's okay. We're paying 12,000 to do this work. Is it okay? This is like 13 years back. Like. So yeah, it was not an easy journey at all. When I started it. But then I just, like, sometimes I didn't just make money, but I said, no, this is what I want to do, and I will do. And till today I'm still doing it. Sometimes for months I don't have work, and sometimes the whole month I'm working. So it doesn't matter, it always balances out. So I don't regret it.
I was just going to say that it proves that you know what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I want to do it. And I always wanted to do something in art. So if I'm not doing photography, I'm sketching or scribbling, or I'm cooking. So I think I know all these 3 things. That's it. And then the book came out. And my dad today, he meets anybody, he says, that's my daughter's work. So that makes me happy. That's all I wanted him to know. But you know what? He doesn't know. They don't understand that this is the kind of work I do. So when they tell my relatives, or if I tell I'm doing a shoot, so they think I'm going out with a camera just shooting random stuff, leaves, flowers, trees, I guess. So and when I told them, they don't even know I've come for this talk today. And it's nice, they don't know what I'm doing actually. It feels good because at home you're still doing, you're sweeping, one day you're cleaning your toilet, and suddenly you realize one day you're picking with your camera. So you're just a normal human being when you're not with your camera. And when I'm with my camera, I'm special. I feel special. That's it.
Yeah, thanks. I think Assavri just reinvented the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It should be called sex, drug, and film roll. So my journey is a bit different. I grew up, I'm 63, so I grew up in the 50s. And at that time, when you were career choices, photography really wasn't a career. If you were a boy, it was very simple in those back then. If you were a boy, you did science. If you were a girl, you did arts. If you were Gujarati, you did commerce. You know? And that was pretty much it. Not being girl or Gujarati, I ended up doing science. And then I had yearnings. I suppose I had tendencies, but I didn't at those times. In those years, there was no career counseling and that kind of stuff. And one stumbled into it. And I feel my life has been a process of not me choosing things, but it choosing me in reverse. And I feel now, rather than chase, and that's partly where my voice comes from, is that if I chase something, it seems to move further away. It's almost like one of those, the redshift, in the galaxy, when the stars that have redshift are moving further away than the stars that have green shift, etc. So every time I chase after a star, it seems to move further away. And then I realize, hello, just let me sit by the wind in the Ganga and let see the enemy of my body the body of my enemy float by. So I just thought, let me wait and just be present, and then things as they come, you can devour them. So I started off as a biochemist, whatever, and then inadvertently I bought a camera through the same sort of thing. One bought a camera because everybody was something cool to do then. It was all film based in those days, so one had to be very judicious because film was awfully expensive, you had to process it, etc. And then I worked in the Middle East, because then the bug got to me, the bug of photography. I'm not even talking of voice here, just the bug of photography, the bug of creating something bit me. And I figured in India you had to pay 240% duty on a camera, yeah? So you had necessarily, ipso facto, to smuggle a camera in those days. So when young people can walk in today and buy an iPhone or buy a DSLR, and your dad throws 11 grand at you and says, go and buy a camera. The fact is you can walk into a store today, how lucky you are to be able to buy a camera. In those years you had to smuggle one in, or get a second-hand camera, or whatever. And I feel that in many ways that discipline, that, I don't want to call it hardship because I don't want to feel a victim of that process, but that made one lean, made one very judicious, that you had to be very careful about how you shot. Today, with digital, I still shoot in an old-fashioned way. I still don't look back on my screen. And that's sort of just looking through that viewfinder, and I can't conceive of myself buying a camera where I looked at the screen. Because, if you just imagine, that's my screen. I'm not looking at Abeer anymore, I'm looking at my screen. So the whole focus and the way you see would determine your voice, because the way, if I'm seeing here at my yellow paper, which is my screen, and if I'm looking through at Abeer through a little glass, whatever window, it's very different, I will think. So that discipline, that old-fashioned kind of discipline, I now embrace in the digital format, and the idea is that you can shoot so much more. In those years, you had to be so judicious about exposure and all of that. Now, cameras. The other day, I shot some underwater work, and inadvertently, my camera was 4 stops overexposed. In the bad old days, it was a corner. You had just simply to reconcile yourself to the fact that that was over, and then begin again. But through post-processing and through the magic of Photoshop and whatever, I was able to bring back those highlights, to usable state. So, coming back to voice, I feel voice is crucial, and creating your own unique zaban, your own unique voice, whether you're a writer, dancer, musician, poet, photographer, whatever. And I feel that my lament, I used to teach in colleges in Mumbai, and my large focus of attention would be on de-schooling, because I feel what school has done in India has been to drum out your voice. Picasso famously said, we're all born artists, and staying an artist as we grow older is the key. So what education, in fact, drums out your voice. So the question I'm going to ask, I'm asking all of us in here, to the audience, is there too much of visual clutter? Everywhere we go, we are surrounded by things that prejudice us, prejudice our voice. And invariably in India, as Assavri was saying, you have a hard time selling your work. Is the market driving your voice? In other words, does the voice come from inside you, or does the voice come from outside? Does the market say, this kind of photography is appreciated, black and white? I have a big beef about black and white in the subcontinent and in Bangladesh and wherever. And black and white has its own etymology in Europe, and I don't really want to go there. That could be a separate conversation. But does voice in our part of the world, and since you straddle both those worlds, in Nigeria being a third continent, does voice in our particular part of the world, in photography and in voice in general, do we censure ourselves in some ways? And does the state suppress voice? Does the educational system suppress voice? And if it does, how do we regain? How do we rediscover, re-employ, take control of voice? How do we develop our own language?
I think it's a really tough thing, because if you're trying to make a living as an artist, I think it can really skew what the market wants, can really skew what it is that you end up producing. I found this to be a really big challenge for me in writing and photography. And so one of my strategies for that was to actually have another job that didn't have anything to do with writing or photography. So then I could write or photograph whatever it was I wanted to, and it wouldn't necessarily be something marketable or saleable, but it would be exactly my vision. But that's not, always open to everybody. And if you wanted to actually make a living as a photographer, I think it would be really challenging not to fall prey to whatever the lures of the market are. I'm not sure how people actually deal with that, because I've sidestepped it by finding another way to make a living. But in Bangladesh, I know, when I moved there in 2006, and I lived there for a few years, and I was actually writing and taking photographs. I was on a Fulbright, so I was actually being funded to write and take photographs, which is it was the first time I'd ever been paid to actually make art. So I was in a very special, very rarefied, elite, kind of privileged position, where I didn't have to worry about what it was that I was making other than what I wanted to do. But the other photographers I met, and there's some super talented there's a lot of amazing photography coming out of Bangladesh, and they have this lovely photography institute now, Pathshala, and all these photography galleries that are happening in Dhaka. But the kind of photographs that people were shooting were very, they were determined by, I call it NGO photography. So it was, whatever various NGOs were doing as their projects, those were the kinds of things that the photographers were also shooting. It became a little bit like poverty porn or whatever, like those kinds of things. Like, you shoot brothels and slums and inside of factories or shipbreaking yards. And so all these kinds of and they're beautiful photographs, and they're important photographs as well. But they fell into very specific and very narrow, limited categories. And it was too bad, because for the talent that is out there, I would love to see more art photography coming out of it. But I don't know how to support that, because I'm not sure how else they were getting paid by, say, an NGO to do a certain project. And so if you don't have the money to do something else, I don't know how you would have space to do it.
You want to talk about being in Goa, and does gender and do those things influence your voice? Does the market, does commercial photography influence the way you photograph and what you photograph and how you do it?
Initially, I think it did, but I don't do weddings and I don't do events. I do everything else. So today, when I started out photography, there were hardly any photographers in Goa. Actually, I don't remember except for the press photographers and wedding photographers. The wedding photographers also were the press people used to do wedding photography.